Hello folks, this is Dave Wood and I'm talking to you from my home office out in Costa Rica, and I wanted to talk to you about the power of diversity and why we do some of the things that we do. You know, I had some really interesting experiences today. Started off actually with a conference call where I called in and there was a group of pastors, and I was actually talking to this congregation of people, Christian folks on a conference line, and talking to them about the way that we empower people, by helping them to learn to create income on the internet, and the way that we do that in a unique and a powerful way where somebody can just get involved with it, whatever their background is. And I started talking about the amazing amount of diversity that we have in Empower Network. It's a unique diversity. You know, those of you who have been to our events, who have been to Chicago, or maybe you were in San Diego, or maybe you were in Austin, or maybe even came to our first event that we ever did out in Atlanta. And in that room, you would have a guy who just looked like a straight hippie coming out of the jungle with long hair, just kind of looking like he's growling, up on stage making, $60,000 and $70,000 a month. Now Justin's actually up close to $80,000 a month. And I want to talk about that here for a second in a moment, not yet. And then we'll have right after him, a guy who's just a hardcore Christian will get up, who you can't even get to say badass if you really beg him to say it. And then right after that, you have another guy step up out on the stage who's an atheist. And then you got a guy step out on the stage, or a gal step on the stage. You got an African-American lady. Then you've got somebody who's, been a former drug addict. We have got old people and young people, people from every background succeeding. And it's such an amazing, wonderful thing. And there are people all around the world who want to join Empower Network. And they've got some sort of problem or another. The other day I was actually talking about, when I made a video, I was talking about a guy who had invented this problem. And, it was really interesting because I made the video and he's like, Dave, I saw the video, and then, he was like, but I'm not making it up, right? And I said, okay. So I popped on the phone with him because he's a buddy of mine, and I popped on the phone and talked about him. And you know what we came to after about a 20-minute conversation? I'm going to talk about that in near the end of this video. This video is actually going to be fairly short. So back to Justin Varengio. He's making right around now. He's in our leadership council, which you can only get into if you've made over $250,000 in Empower Network. I believe your income now has to have averaged around $40,000 a month for the last 90 days. And then you have to sign a kind of a non-disclosure, because we disclose things to that room about the direction of the company, where we're investing our financial resources and things, right? And they can't talk about it. They're not allowed to. And then we all pool our resources and our talents and our minds together to lead the direction and the vision of the company for your best interest. And Justin's in that room. And I had to think about Justin for a second, because a little over a year ago, Justin had never made more than $4,000 in a month in network marketing. And he'd been doing this online for like 5 years. He was pounding the phones, hounding grandma to come in. And a lot of you guys saw that story where he came to my house and he almost drowned. If you actually look back, and I'm going to try to link to it on this blog post. I'm not sure how fast I'll find it, or if I'll remember that I said I'd link to it. So you might need to search for it. You can actually find a video where Justin Varengio comes down to my house in Costa Rica, and we go out to a waterfall. And in the video, we caught him live almost drowning. See, what I'm always looking for in people's lives is I'm looking for a turning point in their life, right? Just like the guy on the phone the other day, or earlier today, who the other day had a problem with something he had invented and concocted in his mind, all the reasons why the universe was out to get him with this particular instant. He had let something build up for like 6 months or 8 months, right? That just kept building and building and building and building. And when it came to a conversation about what the thing actually was, he had invented it all in his mind. And he's a great guy and doesn't normally do that. But in this instance, he had invented this concoction all in his mind, this unbelievable problem that was so gigantic that it just looked like this mountain that was in front of him. And all he could see in every direction were hills and mountains and these big problems that were preventing him from taking the actions that he needed to take. And maybe you've got a problem as well that's been preventing you from deciding to take action that you need to take. I don't know. So anyways, Justin's at my house. You can see the video where he almost drowned. What you can't see, though, is an interesting thing that happened. So Justin's over at my house, and I don't know if you've ever heard me tell this story before. If you ever heard Justin tell the story on stage, Justin was down and, he's drowning, and, I see him over there. You can see the video for more information about that. I actually show you where he almost drowned. What I didn't catch in the video, though, is what happened next. See, I'm always looking for turning points, because people can make new decisions like that. Somebody can create new experiences in their life like that. Somebody can decide that they're going to be successful from this point forever in the future like that by just deciding to act in a different way. You can make a new decision that you're going to be in Denver. You can make a decision that you're taking a team with you, and it doesn't matter that you only have 3 weeks left. That room full of Christian people didn't seem to care. There's only a few weeks left. I wouldn't be surprised if they had 300 people at the event, because they'd made a decision just like that. That you can make a decision just like that anytime you choose in your business, and anytime you choose in your life. You can make a decision to join. You can make a decision to get started. You can make a decision right now to get all in. Right? To get all in with everything, to get all in emotionally, financially, spiritually, everything pointed in one direction towards your vision, your goals, like we were talking about. Or you can decide to let this gigantic obstacle, whatever it is, stand in your way. One person, had somebody say something to them, and they said, well, I can't join because this gigantic obstacle is in my way, like this guy I was talking to the other day. And I'm going to tell you that story here in a sec as well. Now, Justin comes and he almost drowns. So he comes up and he goes into this state inside, right? Where his mind is silent. And your mind does that all the time. But there are special moments where your mind is silent, where you're doing something and your world has just been torn apart. Something happens, and maybe it's a tragedy. Maybe it's something amazing. But whatever it is that happens, your mind just goes silent for a second, and you go to this place inside, deep within. And you can make new decisions and assign meaning to things when that happens. And this experience with this guy with this gigantic problem, he had assigned this gigantic problem to this big thing that had happened in his life. So Justin comes up and he gets out of the water, and he'd almost drowned. And he realized that, and he had his pupils dilated like this big, and adrenaline was pumping through his body, and his face was white. And he realized, here I am, still alive. And nothing was going on in his mind. And I looked at him right in the eye, and I knew that there was a moment. And I said, and just like you're still alive, and you're still here, defying the odds, you can realize something, that you're here for a reason. And that, now that you've come up and realized something new about what you can do, you can treat every day like it's your last. And now, start living the life that you've always dreamed. Put my hand on his shoulder, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, it's your time now. Start acting like it. So anyways, this guy I'm talking on the phone, and, he's got this gigantic issue where he had thought this big thing had happened, and nobody, it was all these situations where people were talking about him, and I went and asked some people, and they were like, no, I wasn't even actually, I never even thought about him. He'd invented it all, right? A conspiracy against him, this gigantic thing that he had let stew, right? So, I related it to this, there was a gigantic problem, and it was a mountain in front of your eyes. It was so big that it stretched in every direction. Every direction you could see, all you could see was these gigantic mounds of problems. And you look this way and there's problems, and you look that way and there's problems, and you can't even turn your head around because all you can see is these gigantic mounds of mountains standing in your way. Until you realize that you're looking at it from the perspective of a speck of dust floating through space, and you decide instead to take a step back and see something different. And you take a step back a few feet, and now you just see one gigantic football, and realize that you weren't looking at a mountain. You were looking right at one of those little mounds on a football right in front of your face. And by stepping back, Now it's gigantic, and it still seems like somewhere on this ball there's a little speck, there's a little problem. You don't have the money to join, you don't have the money to go to Denver, whatever it is, or you can't make a decision because your wife or whatever it is that you've got, until you realize that you're looking at that football through the eyes of an ant, and you can step back, and now you can look at it through the eyes of the football player who's running at the ball. And it's big for him too, because see, something the professional athletes do is they distort time. They slow time down. You ever been driving along the freeway, and you're driving along the freeway and it's going really fast, really fast, really fast, and then you go off on a road going 20 miles an hour and it seems like time almost stops. Or you're watching a movie and it's really good, and before you know it, you're in a trance, and then Superman is saving the day at the end of the movie. Fantastic movie, by the way. Got a story about that too. Your unconscious mind can distort time. So now you're running at this in slow motion. The football is taking up your whole vision, but it's down there and it's smaller than your shin. And you kick the football, realizing you just kicked your problem away as it's flying through the air. You can take another step back from a guy in the bleachers looking down through thousands of people applauding, and somewhere down there there's a ball floating through space in slow motion, and on that ball there's a speck somewhere, and it may have turned and maybe you can't even see it, and that speck, when you're looking at it right in your eye, was your problem. And now you can't even see it. But you take a step back, and now you're the balloon floating over the football stadium. And now all you can see is somewhere down there, there's a stadium that looks about the size of a swimming pool from way up, floating through the air. And there's a swimming pool down there full of people cheering that you can't even hear. And down there somewhere, there's a ball floating through space that has a speck on that ball somewhere that used to be the problem that you had, that was stopping you from taking the action that you need to take, from deciding to join, from deciding to just get started, to go for it, to go for your dreams, to go for your goals, to go for your future. And then you can realize that you can take yet another step back, and you can look at it from the satellite in space that can't even see the stadium unless it focuses in, because all it is on the map is a dot covered by a cloud, and you can't even see through the cloud. But somewhere through that cloud, there's a dot that if you go down far enough, there's a stadium full of people cheering with a ball floating through the air in slow motion, because your unconscious mind has slowed down time. And on that ball, there's one little tiny mound that used to be a mountain of that problem that you once had. And you take a step back, realizing that this is just one view on one planet, on one solar system, stepping back, and somewhere looking at the galaxies below, there's one galaxy with one solar system, with one planet, with one city. And in that city, there's a stadium full of little people down there somewhere, and somewhere there's a ball floating through space that has something that you thought was a mountain. And now all you can see is majesty. Because when you look at your vision, and it's huge, and it's bigger than life, and it traps the universe, and it gets so big that it just envelops and grows into trees that grow roots into everything around you, when your vision's that big, and you're looking at it from that perspective, all of a sudden your problems get lost in the details. And that's okay to just make a new decision to join, to meet us in Denver, to be there with us. And I got off the phone call with this guy who I made a video about yesterday. And at the end of the conversation, he made a new decision. And I heard something in his voice. And I said, just like you can assign meaning to anything, why not make this mean something new? It starts by deciding to join, by deciding to leave a comment, by deciding that you're going to be in Denver, that's it, period. By deciding that you're going to see what we release that's under NDA, by deciding that you're going to be there with us, lifting you up. And you'll be the one on stage. You'll be the one creating the auditorium, slowing time down as you share your story about that little speck that you could barely remember a long time ago, where you used to have a problem somewhere where you thought it was huge, until you stepped back and realized that you have all the resources available to you as far as the eye can see, and everything's moving by slowly, leading you to the direction that you want to go. And the ball is flying, regardless of that problem, right through the goalpost. I'll see you in Denver.